Hi, welcome back to another episode of ColdstreamRodshop. I'm Derek Fraser. In this week's video, we're going to be working on the back half of the 32 Roadster. What we have here is a back half of a 32 Roadster, but it is in really bad shape. The gentleman that bought it, I don't know whether he started grinding the body fill off, but most of this stuff looks like the old White Lightning and color changing body fill of my teenage years, many years ago. We were kind of hoping to use some of this metal, but it is significantly beat up. I mean, they did the old cave it and pave it kind of body fill back in the day. There's a lot of stuff that's brazed in, bits and pieces. It's pretty bad. I guess if you only had this and it was all you could work with, maybe, you know, we would try to save some of it, but it's going to take hours and hours, if it's possible at all, to probably use these quarters. But what we've got over in the corner over here is two brand new Brookville Roadster quarter panels. So the owner anticipated kind of what was going on with this, and his hope and expectation is that I'm going to be able to try and use the upper deck lid and the lower deck lid plus all the internal structural parts. So the B-pillars and the supports that go along here look to be in reasonably good shape. I'm quite certain I can save these, and if I get them out, make a repair to them if necessary, but they actually look pretty sound and pretty straight. So it's going to be probably quite destructive to take some of this stuff out. I want to save as much 32 metal as I can, but there's only so much you can do. There's a lot to be taken out of here. On the lower deck lid section, there's a lot of sheet metal pieces. If you've watched me put together the Brookville Roadster bodies before, there's quite a few pieces in here. In the event that I can't save some of this stuff, I actually have some pieces that are basically made up. I could actually replace this whole lower deck lid section with stock that I have over there. But that's not the number one choice. The number one choice is to try and get as many of these pieces apart, fix and repair them, and attach them to those two quarter panels. So don't know how far we're going to get in this week's video. It's going to take quite a bit of time to take this apart, but please watch along and see where we go. So there's the V-pillar along with the supporting sheet metal that goes up along the back of here. I didn't film taking it out because it was quite a destructive process. Had to use a plasma cutter, a mini grinder, recip saw, all kinds of stuff to try and get it out without damaging the parts that I need to use. Ultimately, I did damage some pieces that I'm going to have to repair later, but the primary goal was to get all of these pieces out intact without destroying any of these. Now, one thing I noticed is that right there, as you can see, it's kind of broken. So I noticed, I looked up inside on the other side. This is the passenger side. We're going to, the driver's side, this particular area here is also cracked on the other side, so I'm going to have to repair that. Another thing I noticed was that someone has welded this bracket on. They cut it off. I don't know if you can see this or not, but it doesn't quite line up. This has actually moved forward a little bit too much. Now I just tried dummying it into the quarter panel here, and it doesn't fit right away, which I'm not really surprised, because even when I've got the Brookville parts, you've got to do a little bit of finessing and stuff to get it in. It looks as though the hole for the roof bracket, I'm going to have to open that up, and like I said, I'm going to have to shift this bracket back. So I'm going to carry on with this. Oh, the other thing I had to do was here. on the bottom, this bottom foot here that actually welds or rivets to the side of the subframe. I had to weld a piece on here. All along here there was basically a double quarter panel. There was all kinds of bronze welding I had to clean out. Fortunately, the metal underneath was still really good, so I didn't have to do any kind of reconstruction there. More than likely I'm going to put a coat of primer on the outside of this stuff, and then also on the inside of the quarter panel here before I put that in place. So follow along. We're going to keep on working on the rear quarter panels. After further review, I decided that I would remove this roof support piece and actually make new ones. As you can see, it looked as though at one point in time these were cut off and then somebody welded a new piece on. Not quite straight, not quite in line. So I've got to make up a bunch of these for our Roadster because we don't have them. It's basically a piece of flat bar with a bunch of holes into it. So I'll make up a couple of these and replace it here. The other thing I did, I was able to repair the back of the sheet metal. As you can see, I welded it on the inside, and then right there you can see I welded it on the outside. So needs a little bit more straightening. It almost fits in perfectly here. They go in with a little bit of spring, basically a little bit of tension to hold them in place. So that's almost ready to weld in. What I think that I'm going to do though is that I'm probably going to take the other B-pillar out and get it ready as well, get it cleaned up. And then that way, I think what I'll do is I will epoxy prime the inside of the quarters and the back of these pieces all at once. I don't want to have to set up the paint booth a couple times. So anyways, I'm going to go to hacking that thing out. There's no pretty way of doing it. There's no easy way of doing it. Can't find the welds to drill out. You pretty much have to cut the sheet metal and then grind the sheet metal away. So going to carry on with that and get the driver's side done. Here are all the parts that are kind of left over after ripping the rear section apart. Again, it's a pretty brutal process of either using the recip saw, mini grinder, whatever you can to get it apart. Unfortunately, this rear section must have been rebuilt a couple times and never put back together the way that Henry Ford did. A lot of this stuff is kind of welded and butchered pretty badly. Cut the rear deck panel off, and as you can see here, it looks as though they drilled some holes and put the body fill on the other side. I can feel it might actually even be up to ½ inch thick in some spots here. So I'm going to do my best to take everything off of this upper deck panel, clean it up, and use as much of this metal as possible with potentially replacing the metal in between here. That's the plan. That's not the first thing I'm going to do. And also here is the B-pillar out from the driver's side. I've got to clean it all up and take the sheet metal off of it. And then here's the rear section. One thing I do need from this rear section is this drip rail here. Inside here, I kind of discovered that the lower tail pan is a reproduction. These two pieces here are reproduction. I think that this is an original, and what's left of this support piece is an original. But you can see how they just welded everything together. Now, if this was done by Ford, there'd be 4 sets of bolts there. And most of the time when you do a restoration and when I put the book fills together, we use 4 bolts to hold that together. These sections here, which are the drip rail supports, look like they're original. Potentially I can get everything off of that and clean it up and maybe use as I'm going to try. The floor extension here looks as though it's a reproduction as well, because normally this section here actually sits on top of this and there's 2 rivets holding it in place. So again, We're not going to try and salvage any reproduction pieces. We're going to try and salvage any original pieces off of this. But it's going to be a challenge just because of the way that the previous people who put this together put it together. So first thing is first, the thing I need the most is this drip rail. It looks to be an original. It's got some of the original pieces onto it. There's some damage to it, but I mean, if the metal's sound, I should be able to cut everything off, fill up any holes, and then straighten it out. So that's what I'm gonna do next. And we're gonna carry on trying to get as many original pieces out of this that we can. There is the rain gutter and the rain gutter support for the trunk pulled out of the back of the original Roadster. On the floor there, you can see the sub rail extension. That's multiple layers all welded together to the point I can't salvage it. And I probably said that already, forgive me. But this drip rail support, I don't know what happened. Essentially, I think you can see how much of damage is done to it. The metal is quite sound. I'm gonna have to fix it along here, flatten this out. More than likely, the rain gutter, because it was bent so much, it was basically filled in with body fill, and it was a piece of metal welded across the top of it too. Nobody tried to straighten this out. They just, for whatever reason, I mean, there was a time when we used to, cave it and pave it, so to speak. That was perfectly acceptable in the 70s and the 80s. Not now. So what I'll do, I'm going to flatten this out. I'm going to check the profile of it against one of the good ones, and then may actually have to do a little bit of shrinking around here just to make sure that the profile is right. I'm quite sure that I can save this. There's a little bit of some bronze here I'm going to have to get rid of and maybe graft in a little piece of metal here. We'll see how it goes once I kind of straighten everything out. But there was actually undercoating on here. I got that stripped off with the stripper wheel. It was the only thing that was get it. In places a little bit of a mess right now, but all the holes are intact where we bolt on the lower deck lid, and even the holes along the bottom here where the rivets went on the original, I was able to save those. So this one, although damaged, is I think with a little bit of work, it's going to be perfectly good, because we need this drip rail to go in the quarter, because I don't have one. The other quarter panel behind me does have a drip rail already welded into it. It came with it, so don't have to worry about that one. But I do want to try and salvage this other drip rail support down here. It does not look damaged. Got a lot of crap welded to it, but it looks as though it's not been damaged or anything. So we'll recover that, and we'll carry on with working on the quarters. Well, there's a little bit of mess here. I got all my tools out. I've got the drip rail straightened out. Kind of semi-happy with that. Not finished, but gonna have to fill up a couple holes and maybe do a little bit of tweaking. Unfortunately, when you're cutting this stuff out, sometimes you nick it. So we'll fix that. We'll fill these holes up. Right now, the drip rail support, I'm quite happy with that. I've got that straight now. Gonna have to do, like I say, a couple little bit of welds into it. The back of it now, there it is in the light. If you saw it a couple seconds ago, it was pretty distorted. Got most of the crap ground away here, so there's a little bit of weld repair going to go on there. The bottom edge of the drip edge, right here, doesn't look like it's salvageable. But I dug through some of my pieces when I was making other parts back on the 5 window, and I always kept stuff like this. You never know what you're going to use it for at some point in time. So this will make the repair right there. So either I'll make it right from this one, or I'll make another piece like it. I've got a little dolly that I made for turning the edge over, but it looks as though, even though this has got a bit of a twist to it, I'll just put it in the shrinker there and straighten it out. I'm quite certain that's going to make our little repair here. So going to carry on, do the cosmetic stuff, the touch-ups on this, double check the curve onto it, and I think we've salvaged the drip rail and the drip rail support. So there's the drip rail all repaired up. I removed this section here from this area, and I welded in a new piece. You can see it there. It's all welded and dressed up. It's a lot better than what it did before. I welded the edge along here, flattened this edge, and I even took the drip rail and compared it. I don't know if I could do this very well, but essentially, I can't show you with just one hand, but essentially took this drip rail, compared it to the one on the Brookfield here, and then adjusted along this edge with the shrinker and the stretcher just to kind of tweak it back in, because of all the dents and everything else, there was some stretching going on. So right now the profile along this edge matches the reproduction one over there. So I've already taken this piece and kind of trial fitted it in the quarter panel over there, so it's pretty much ready to tack in. So what I'll do now is I will, and it's all dressed on both sides, so I'll get that ready to tack it in the driver's side quarter panel over here, and get this side up to where the other side is. There is the rain gutter for the driver's side quarter, all welded in now. Basically welded it every 2 inches, drilled a 3/16 hole, and then welded it and then clamped it all the way along, then dressed it off. Here's the rain gutter support, welded in place. I still have to drill, there's 4 holes that'll come through here that the lower deck lid attaches on. So this one basically is done and repaired and brought up to the same place as the other reproduction one with the rain gutter. And so far I've cut out the rain gutter support and the rain gutter from the other side. It's not, I mean, it's been welded on, but it's not damaged or distorted or twisted like the other one. So I'm going to have to cut off 3 or 4 layers of metal off the bottom, dress this off, and basically clean it up. A little bit of, well, there's a little bit of damage right there and there, but that's not, I mean, I can fix that up, no problem. It's nothing like the other side. So I'm going to get this one all cut off, cleaned up, and then we'll get it attached to the quarter panel over here. And then we will start on, there's actually support pieces here. I've got a set of original support pieces. They've got to get welded in as well. So these have got to be cleaned up, and the other B pillar that I cut out has to be cleaned up as well. So lots more to do on these quarters. Here is the second drip rail support after I cleaned off all the old pieces of weld and sheet metal and stuff. I hammered out some of the edges a little bit. It was twisted a little. Same thing along the bottom. The only thing I've got to do now is right there, I've got to weld a piece in, and then basically that piece is ready to weld into the other quarter. It's much better shape than what the other one was, as I just showed you a few minutes ago. But it's all cleaned up, ready to go in, so we're going to get that into the other quarter panel. In addition, I drilled the holes here for the lower deck lid, and then what I'll do, again, I'll weld this into the other quarter panel, and I'll drill these holes as well. So follow along, and we're going to carry on with this. So when somebody says you can't have enough vice grips, this is what I mean. Almost used all of them up, but this is what it takes to basically clamp in the B pillar and the support structure that goes around the top of the back of the cab. One thing about this, the original has a dip right here. So what I'm going to have to do to accommodate the original wood, because the original wood, there's a piece that dips down here that the upholstery wraps around. So what we're going to try and do is duplicate it. I don't know if Brookfield sells the quarters with that dip into it. I think they make it because they cut the metal here to allow for it if somebody wants to do it. But like most hot rods right now, they have this all filled in versus like here on the floor. I've cut out the other side. You can see how the original would be in that same area. If you can see how it dips down there. So I have to duplicate that. It's not that pretty. Basically, I think in the factory they would have cut it and just hammered it down and then spot welded it. Probably going to do a little bit better job than that on this one. So at this stage right now, I'm ready to drill some 3/16 holes at different spots, and then start welding this in place to basically duplicate the spot welds. But it takes a few vice grips to hold this thing in place. Here's everything spot welded in place. I'm going to show you before I dress any of the spot welds up, where I welded it right along here. There's a bunch of different pieces of metal that are bent in that have to be cleaned up and welded. That's the way they are normally when they come from Brookfield. Little weld around there. Again, drilled like 3/16 holes, turned the welder up, made sure I got good penetration, so kind of simulate spot welds. So I'm going to dress all of those off. And then over here, this is where they are spot welded. Oops, sorry. Right there. This is where they're spot welded at the factory. Brookfield, I think spot welds them here on the edge, but I drilled 3/16 holes and did spot welds along the edge here. I'll dress those up and you won't be able to see it. And then the other thing that I did was that I cut this area here and bent it down to simulate the way the originals are, and then drilled the holes up from underneath that eventually will allow bolting the piece of wood on that goes there. So over here is the other one. I had made some patterns with masking tape, basically making sure that they're mirror images of each other. So this is the original one. This one here, I still have to remove the top part of the sheet metal off and clean up the B-pillar to do the other side. But before I did that, I wanted to make sure that I got this one correct. So this one's all ready to dress up. The only other thing we have to do is I have to drill the holes up here for the deck lid. And then over here on the floor, I've got to clean one of those supports up. And that will actually locate up off of these two holes, and it goes down to the inner fender well here. I'll show you that just later on. That's next up. I now have the passenger side quarter panel to the point where I'm going to trial fit it onto the body over here. What I did, I carried on with it and I ground off the tops of where I did the welds through the pieces, the spot welds, created a new support piece for the top. It's basically 3/16 inch thick bar stock, and just I drilled a 3/8 hole here. Now on the original that I had a 1/2 inch hole, but I would rather make the hole a little smaller and then later open it up. We have I don't know if I showed you those, the through holes here for the wood. And then what I did was the top deck lid panel, I cleaned off all of the welds and the metal and stuff to access these holes, this pattern here. Then I positioned this up here, and I drilled the holes for the deck lid, and then also the hinge holes. I've pre-drilled those. Right now those are 1/4 inch holes. I will have to open those up a little bit more for the deck hinge. And then this support piece here, I cleaned this all up, and it's spot welded in place there and there. And then it'll be further held in place by 1/4 inch bolts when the top deck lid panel goes on. Now the bottom here, I don't weld these on until after the car is completely in place. Everything's all squared up. And usually I'll put a cross brace in behind the seat, and then I'll final weld these once I'm satisfied that everything's all, squared up side to side and triangulated, so to speak. So right now what I'm going to do is I am going to test fit that quarter panel on the side of the car. I am not going to weld it on because the intention is to actually do the other quarter panel, and then I'm going to epoxy prime the inside of these before I put them on the car, because it's just going to be easier because eventually the whole car is going to be epoxy prime, but I'll be able to get into spots on this with the small spray gun that I won't be able to when the car is fully assembled. So follow along here. I'm going to wrap up this video of doing the driver's side quarter panel. So here is the passenger side quarter panel. Like I said, I've got it positioned on the car with a pair of vice grips and a clamp down here, basically just doing a sanity check to make sure that it fits properly. I'm not going to leave it on, as I said, because I want to finish both quarters, and just like I probably said 4 or 5 times, I think now, epoxy prime the inside of these before I permanently attach them. But right now it's fitting 95% the way it should. A little bit of tweaking I'm going to have to do. I've got a good gap, and basically it positions the way that it's supposed to in all the other cases when I put these Roadsters together. So next week what we'll be working on is we've got the other quarter panel over here, kind of do the same thing to it that we did to this one. We've got the B-pillar we've got to clean up and everything, and I basically purposely didn't strip it down because I wanted to make sure that I had this relief section as a reference to make sure I got that one right. And then also the upper deck lid I've talked about already. Basically mentioned that there's an extreme amount of body fill, and I don't think we can really show it justice with the camera, just how much this is basically dented. I think that ultimately the fix for this is I'm going to have to make basically I think I'm going to have to make the whole back section here in sheet metal and weld it on, but we'll see. I've got to get all the body fill off to figure that out. But ultimately this also has to be fixed. So that's it for this week. As you can see there, one side of it is actually starting to look like a 32 Roadster. So we're making a lot of progress. We're getting there, but it's a lengthy process. It takes more time to salvage the original parts than what we did when we made the Brookville Roadsters. But we're on the way. Anyways, hopefully you liked this video. Please like, share, tag, and subscribe, and join us next week as we keep on working on the International Roadster. Everybody take care and have a great week.